Hi. Um, Often I've made these broadcasts to mid singles with Kathy, and as we've talked about dating, we've often talked about it together. And I want to make this one by myself because I'm going to speak as a man to the mid single women. And there's a lot of puzzling, between girlfriends and whatever on uh, what's he really thinking? What's inside this guy's head? And I want to talk to you about what's inside his head and what he's thinking, because a lot of times you're guessing and you're getting it wrong. And you're guessing according to what you're like. And you assume that, like Jeff Foxworthy says, women think that because men are complicated, that women are complicated, that men are complicated. And they wonder what he's really thinking. And, he makes jokes about how simple they really are. Well, I don't think men are actually all that simple, but they aren't women. They're very different in certain ways. And so I'd like to talk with you, at least from my perspective, about what it's like to be a man when it comes to relationships with women and what it was like when I was dating back in the day, not all that long ago. So I'm going to tell you a few things, and I'm going to trust you to be sensitive as well as understanding. And I'm going to try and do the same as I talk to you. Now, the first idea I want to give you, and scientifically proven, uh, men tend to be visually stimulated. To some women, perhaps to many women, that's a very threatening idea. It's like, do you just like me for my body or my looks? And I'm going to tell you that for a man, that's always a piece of it. That's always part of it. It isn't enough, but that's always a little part of it. And let's talk about maybe what some of your fears and worries might be in that regard, and what we can do to make sense out of that. Um, I'm not suggesting in any way that you need to be a supermodel or, you know, have a perfect face or the conventional, perfect body to be attractive to a man. And I'm not even suggesting that you strive for that. Um, Men are attracted by a variety of different body types and facial features. And for me, I've always been attracted to women that are a little more curvy rather than, the sort of stick figure um, type that so many believe is the ideal type. And if you are that type, there's many men that will be attracted to that. But whatever your body type is, there will be men out there that prefer your type. And so, don't get stressed about, I'm not conventional in the way that I think um, the world expects me to be, or what I see in Cosmopolitan magazine or whatever, because physical attraction can come in a variety of different shapes and sizes, and so I'm not suggesting that you need to be a particular way in that regard to be attractive to a man. My wife is also a girly girl. That doesn't mean she can't get out and hike. I mean, we posted video last week of her in a cap and hiking clothes, and we went out and did an 8 mile hike together, and she did well. And I enjoy doing those kinds of things with her. But I'm also trying to tell you that, she's a girly girl. She likes pretty things and, prefers dresses, and her casual stuff is yoga pants, not jeans and t-shirts. Um, and, she wears makeup really well, and, she has a very feminine quality in the way she looks. Now, that's attractive to me. It's not necessarily attractive to every man. It's not what every man wants. Some guys prefer girls in jeans and t-shirts. And so I'm suggesting, be yourself. Find the kind of person who likes who you are. Some men prefer different facial types. Um, if you think your face is too round, some guy is going to think you look like a Cabbage Patch doll and think that's really cute. And as funny as that sounds, the girl with a round face, there are plenty of guys that think that's just so cute. The button nose, whatever, and will really be attracted to that. And if you have a nose that's a little bit larger than average, or a chin that is a little bit longer than average, there's plenty of guys who's going to think that looks edgy and sexy and just different enough to make you very attractive. And you may not think that of yourself. You may look in the mirror and say, oh, look at my big ugly nose. And I promise you, there are guys out there that are going to see that nose and think it is your best feature, that it's going to be very attractive too. This stuff, it's not rational. It's not something that you can measure in some way. It comes from a deeper place than that. And so I guess what I'm trying to say with all of this, and I hope I'm not offending anyone with these comments, because ultimately what I'm trying to say is that there are going to be men that believe that your type is attractive regardless of how God made you. Now, you might be asking, well, if that's the case, where is he? How come I'm not finding him? If I'm attractive to somebody, why isn't he showing up? Fair question. So the point of what I've said so far is, don't worry about the things you can't change, the things that you would have to take drastic measures to change, like plastic surgery or something like that. Don't worry about that stuff. It is what it is, and you can work with it, and there will be people that are attracted to you, whatever your features and whatever your natural sort of build is. That isn't to say that there's nothing else you can do. When I was a mid-single, I've always had a little bit of a tendency to have extra weight. When I was a mid-single, I had a gym membership for most of those years. And I went as regularly as I reasonably could. And I had a grown son, and he used to come with me. And I didn't feel like I needed to sacrifice a lot of time with him to try to stay in shape. I also had nights when he was at work, and I went to the gym by myself. So getting in physical shape is good. And you might say, well, I have young children. I can't just take off and go to the gym when my young children are at home and need my supervision, and I don't really want to leave them alone. And I get that too, because I dealt with the same thing, and I even deal with that now. I mean, I have stepkids, and there's times when I don't want to take off in the evening and go to the gym because I have a wife here at home, but I also don't want to let my body go too much. I have a bicycle, and I sometimes get up early in the morning and go for a ride. I also have weights in my home office, and I'll get up during the day if I'm working at home, which often I am. I'll get up during the day and do a full set of arm curls or bench presses or whatever, and I'll work sometimes 3 or 4 times during the day. That's an incredible stress reliever. Now, I don't look like Arnold Schwarzenegger. I do the best I can in my circumstances. And so part of what I'm saying on the side of physical attractiveness is do the best you can. If you can't get a gym membership, don't bemoan that. Don't worry about it if you can't afford it, or if you're your responsibilities tie you to the house too much to really make good use of it, do the best you can at home. Um, get an exercise bike if you can afford that. If not, get some hand weights at Walmart. Get a mini tramp and jog on it. Do whatever you can do um, to stay in the best shape you can. Some women I've seen in our area have girlfriends that they go out and walk with. My former mother-in-law, she's in her late 60s now, I believe, and she gets up every morning, and there's a lady in her neighborhood. Um, they go out and walk 4 or 5 miles every day, sometimes more than that, and great way to be social and meet some of those needs as well as getting some exercise. So whatever your situation is in your life, uh, do the best you can to take good care of yourself in terms of exercise and also in terms of nutrition. Uh, and if you got a few extra pounds that you don't like, do your best to get rid of that and be healthy. And I'll tell you, it not only makes you more attractive to men, but it makes you a better mom to your kids. It takes some of the stress. It's a great way to relieve the stress that you sometimes feel, which tempts you to lose your patience and things like that. It makes you a happier person, and a happier person is a better mom. So there's all kinds of reasons to take care of yourself and do good self-care. Um, Another thing on this is, and I say this to the men as well, but wash your hair and bathe at regular intervals. Um, you know, I know some of us, we feel like we got really disappointed by life, and sometimes we let it all go for a while. And um, not everyone, but it makes a much better impression on a date and elsewhere in life when you're looking for a job or whatever, if we're making our best effort to take care of ourselves, to dress as appropriately as we can. Um, I'll be the first to tell you, I shop thrift stores sometimes. This shirt, I got at DI. It was in great shape. When I bought it, it fit me well, and I love it. And no one would know that I bought it at DI if I didn't tell you right now. And I'm telling you that to say, if you think, well, I don't have enough money to dress well, you can buy things at a fraction of the cost at a thrift store, and be discriminating. Don't just buy anything, but look for that piece here and there that's really attractive on you and is lightly used, and maybe somebody bought it and for whatever reason they didn't think it fit them well and donated it after they hadn't worn it for a year. I found lots of stuff like that. So uh, do your best to dress attractively, to be well groomed and clean. Use makeup strategically. I'm not saying, don't do it just for a guy, but if you look better with makeup on and you like the way you look with it, use it strategically. And there's such a thing as too much, and you probably already know that. So those are important ideas. If you're 40 years old, you may also look at it and say, maybe I can't wear the same stuff I could wear when I was 20. Then it was kind of cute and spunky, and now it just looks like I'm behind the times, like I'm not dressing as maturely as I probably ought to at my age. So that's another issue you can look at when you think about your wardrobe. And if you need to, get advice from friends about this, men or women. Do you think this looks good on me? I used to do that. I know a lot of women, you know, judge a guy, their first impression is what shoes he's wearing. Um, I used to send picture texts to my mid-single female friends whenever I bought shoes. What do you think of this? I had to be something I liked too, but I might send several pictures when I'm thinking about a particular kind of shoe I want. Which of these do you think would look best on me, and what do you like? And I often got good advice that way. Okay, so in terms of physical attractiveness, I think the upshot of what I'm trying to say is, first of all, don't worry about the things you can't change. Work on the things you can. Be in better physical condition if you can, and work on, dress and grooming, and make sure you're doing the best you can with those things. I'm not talking about spending hours in front of the mirror or, killing yourself at the gym, but do the best you can based on your life circumstances. And I think you'll feel better and enjoy your life more if you do those things. Now, another thing about men, I want to talk about shame. Shame for a woman, as I understand it, and I don't want to say the wrong, try to get in your head and tell you what you're thinking, but my experience is that women tend to feel shame about not being superwoman, not being the perfect model, not being um, able to hold a career and take care of a bunch of kids and serve in the church and do it all perfectly. And that oftentimes women feel inadequate about those things. For a man, it's really one thing, and I'm borrowing this idea from Brene Brown, but it totally resonates with me. For men, shame is one thing, and that is, do not be seen as weak. Now, this is profound, and it resonates with me in a number of ways. One, Brene Brown talked about the white horse syndrome, or I'm calling it the white horse syndrome, but she talked about when she began studying men, the thing that triggered it was a conversation she had with a man who told her, my wife and my daughters would rather see me die on my white horse than watch me fall down. And he said that, you know, the shame that a man feels isn't so much from bullies or coaches or all the dads. It's really from the women in their lives. And I'm going to tell you that a man won't normally tell you this because of why he feels too ashamed to tell you. It's because he can't be seen as weak. And it puts him in a very lonely place when it comes to women. Now, let's talk about this a little bit. Um, if a Brene Brown also said, if you can sit with a man in genuine fear and vulnerability, you're a woman who's done incredible work. Of course, she means work on yourself and your own ability uh, to look at a man and not be threatened by what he is. Um, I want to talk about that a little bit because as a man, we'll often repress the things we're afraid of around a woman that we love because we don't want to be seen as weak. If I have my own business, but if I had a boss that yelled at me one day for something I did and I just sat there and took it because I didn't want to get fired, well, I feel a little emasculated about that. Now, a woman might go home and cry. She might talk to her husband for several hours about it. Um, for a man, it's different. He internalizes it. He broods about it. Why? Because he can't be seen as weak. And in that moment, when somebody with more power than him was dominating him, he felt weak. And in that, there is an immense amount of shame. And if you're a woman and can sit with him in that situation and be reassuring and just listen, you've done a lot of work. Because what do you expect of your man? Well, at least we think you expect us to be all powerful, to be able to handle anything. And, you know, our blood bleeds red just like yours. But that is an incredibly difficult thing for men in relationships. And you often wonder, you'll hear women talk about, why does my husband always want to be off with his guy friends? Well, I'm going to tell you One of the reasons why men prefer that is guys get it. And sometimes you can be real with the guys where you can't be real with the women in your life because they have an expectation for you to be powerful. And if you can't be weak, if he can't be weak and vulnerable with you, then there's a big part of his heart you're never going to have. You're never going to be able to experience. I want to teach you a new paradigm when it comes to guys. When it comes to men, I want you to repeat the mantra to yourself over and over again. Vulnerability is brave. Vulnerability is strong. Vulnerability is courageous. Vulnerability is brave. Vulnerability is strong. Vulnerability is courageous. Use that affirmation not just for you, but understand it's true for your man too. I want to tell you, when I was first dating Kathy, well, not first, but early on, we had an experience where I got scared that I was going to lose her because of some past trauma that I had and something that she did. And wasn't her at all. It was me, horribleizing about something. And I worked through it, through the emotions, and I sat down and I composed a letter to her on email and sent it over to her. And toward the end of it, I said, I hope these thoughts don't make you feel uncomfortable. But I want to be as real with you as I can. And I know that's the only way I'm really going to be accepted for who I am. And her response was beautiful. She said, it doesn't make me feel uncomfortable. I'm proud of you for the progress you've made and for the self-realization that you have. And oh my gosh, you can't imagine the level of reassurance that gave me of her acceptance and her ability to care for a man that isn't Superman. And that, may be a strong man and a good man and all the things she wants in many ways, but isn't all powerful and sometimes does feel afraid and sometimes does worry about things that aren't real. And, go down the list of things that a man might feel shame about. Now, I work on this. It's something I try to not feel ashamed about being a man who has feelings or separate needs or whatever. But I want you to understand that her being willing to sit with me in that emotion was a big deal for me. And that still matters to me, with her as my wife especially. And so when you think about the men you have relationships with dating, try to keep it real. Don't get scared if he confesses to you that, he got depressed and lost his job after he got divorced or whatever. There's a lot of things that could make you feel threatened or vulnerable, and those it's really important to do the work with yourself to be able to know that you're all right, regardless of what anybody else does, and that you don't necessarily need him to be Superman to solve issues that you have in life. And the stronger you are as a person, the more accepting you can be of a man that isn't Superman. And I'll tell you, none of us are Superman, and the ones that act like they're Superman are kidding themselves, or more importantly, kidding you. So that's something I want you to really try to get a grip on and get a hold of. Another thing that a lot of men feel, but they won't verbalize, is that we're expected to listen to your feelings and not be Mr. Fix-It and not try to judge it. And, You know the common refrain on that. But then we're supposed to pretend we don't have any. Or if we do, they don't count. Believe it or not, I don't think most men want to feel that way. There's a certain amount of shame involved in having them and expressing them, and creating a safe place where they can express them is difficult. I won't kid you, because most, when you get hold of a man when he's 30 or 40 or 50 years old, he's had a lot of years of living in a world where his feelings don't matter and they're not acceptable. And and candidly, that's often because from the time they were little, they were told that big boys don't cry. When they were young men, they were taught to solve things with their fists. Um, and when they're older, they're shamed about being a crybaby if they feel anything. So, how do we change this? I mean, we know that men commit suicide literally 900% as often as women. Okay, there's something wrong with the way we're socializing men. And that's a whole other video. But I want you to think about that in terms of what you expect of men when you're dating. Again, vulnerability is strength. Vulnerability takes courage. Vulnerability is brave. Learn to think that way when you're talking about the men you date, the men you develop relationships with. All right, next subject, imperfection. Most men, not all, but most men go through some significant financial issues when they're depressed. Oftentimes, and that includes when they get divorced. 75% of the time, it wasn't a divorce the man wanted. So it's a bigger blow in a lot of ways. And I'm not suggesting that all the men you date are divorced, but many will be if you're a mid-single and you date very much. Most men go through significant financial difficulties during that period in their life if they've been through a divorce. Is this a man who is still trying, who's getting up and going to work every day, or if he's unemployed, is getting up every day and looking for a job his job, or starting a business his job? Is he a man who is resilient and trying, or is he haphazardly couch surfing and playing video games all day? Okay, in other words, I'm asking you, don't look for perfection. Look for somebody who is trying, who is bouncing back. And cheer him on, become his cheerleader. Doesn't mean you got to marry him right now. I know when Kathy and I started dating, I had just lost my corporate job a few months earlier. I had, was somewhat recently divorced for the second time. And I was starting a brand new business. I was not ready to be a contributing member to a family financially at that point. I was barely supporting myself. And, I'm in a better place now, but I didn't ever give up. I kept working hard at developing my business and my career and wanting to be a contributing member of a family. And we didn't get married for another 2 years, but thankfully we stayed in each other's lives, and ultimately we were both a lot more ready in different ways when we did get married. But think about whether this is a guy who, whatever life hands him, he's going to keep trying. He's not going to give up. And, that involves looking for not a perfect guy, but an imperfect guy who's doing the best he can. And let that be enough, at least for purposes of dating and getting to know him. Is he taking charge of his mental health? Or is he acting out in unhealthy ways? Does he go for a run or go to the gym and lift weights? Does he have friends he talks to about his issues in a healthy way to try to manage whatever heartbreak or issues he's had in the past? Or is he really stuck? And no matter what the discussion is, it always comes back to his ex-wife. And does it always come back to, why does no woman want to date me? Is he really stuck, or is he reading books and talking to positive people and exercising and doing the things that help a person to deal with the challenges that they've faced? Because I've faced them. I've been through divorce. I've been through the death of a sibling. My life hasn't always been sunshine and rainbows, but I've learned a lot about how to manage my mental health and my my moods and my own self through the crises that life hands us. And I know that when you do those things, no storm lasts forever, and you get through it, you move on, you rebuild when necessary. So look at what kind of a guy you've met in that regard, particularly when it comes to his mental health. Is he always blaming someone else, or does he take charge of it? Does he take responsibility for it, for his own self? Now, don't do that in a judgy kind of way, thinking that in his situation you would have done better. That's not what he needs, and that's not going to help. But it's something to observe over time. If he has a pity party one day, it doesn't mean he's a weak man. It doesn't mean you need to shame him or think less of him. Sometimes I throw a little pity party, and then I'm ready to let something go. And sometimes you just got to work through those emotions. But it is part of dealing with my own issues and my own mental health concerns. And so I'm not suggesting that you look at a guy and expect him to be upbeat 24/7. But is he managing it, or is he dealing with it in unhealthy ways? And by the way, look at yourself in that regard. Are you dealing with things in healthy ways? And you'll be in a better position when your heart is at peace to look at whether his heart is at peace most of the time. Don't kid yourself about serious problems. Now, Kathy is an active member of the church, and it was always her intention to marry a man she could marry in the temple. There were a couple of men that she's talked about with me that she really had a strong attraction to for one reason or another. Great things about their personality or the way that they carried themselves. Could be physical attributes. There's a variety of things that she thought were really cool about a particular guy. And for a while, she kidded herself about whether it was going to work. Well, maybe over time. I think I see deeper spirituality in this guy than there really was, because she kind of wanted to see it. Now, in both cases, to her credit, she ultimately decided this just isn't going to work because we're not on the same page about the most deep, important spiritual things that we feel. And, in one case, the guy didn't really like the temple. Well, the temple is very important to Kathy, and the covenants of the temple are. If she couldn't have that with him, it wasn't really going to work. So she didn't marry him thinking, over time, I'll just influence him to feel how I feel. And, I think that's a very important thing also when you're evaluating and thinking about imperfections, is what imperfections matter most. And for her, having a man that she could go to the temple with was really important. That wasn't something she was going to compromise. Um, there were obviously compromises she made when she accepted me, and vice versa. That's true in every relationship. So we don't want to expect perfection, but we want somebody we can work with and whose imperfections we can work with, and we can accept them without having to change them. And I'll tell you, for a man, that's a big deal, probably more than for women. Personal development is a big subject in my life. It's something that's very important to me, and I engage in conversations about it with Kathy all the time. But I don't want her trying to change me. Um, I want to feel accepted as I am, and I know that seems like a contradiction. It's really not. If Kathy can engage with me, and generally she does, on my terms, where I'm saying I really like to lose some weight. Okay, some women might seize on that and say, and be on me every time I ate something that was a little bit wrong for my diet, or, you know, trying to kick my butt out the door to get me exercising every day. Okay, Kathy can engage with me without, on most subjects, without having to take over. And I appreciate that. Um, I think you can be a positive influence when it's not important for you that this person change. I need this person to change so I can feel good, or I need this person to change so that I can be okay. Okay, what you really want to be is a great cheerleader for each other, both men and women. A person who will compliment and praise each other when we achieve something that we've been wanting to do, or who can be a sounding board when we can talk things through with. And that's really what a man needs from you when it comes to his efforts at personal development. But if he's not a person who's focused on personal development, please don't believe that you're going to be able to step in and get him focused on that, because you can't. He might do it for a while if he really likes you because he wants to please you, but he's not going to keep it up. I promise you, once the ring is on your finger, he's not going to keep it up because it's not really important to him. And he's not going to want constant nagging or nitpicking about it. So, Kathy will tell you that I pitch in and I help around the house, and I try to do my share to make our home environment uh, pleasant to be in and attractive. I do that partly because Kathy makes that a priority, and I'm not, you know, climbing a greased wall trying to do it myself. So that's part of it, and part of it is that I want it like that. Um, Now, if I really didn't care if our house was clean, there's really nothing she could do to make me change that. Uh, so she married someone who was willing to help out around the house and to do, to keep his own clothes and things picked up. And, I don't do it perfectly, but I really try. And I know it's important to her, and that is part of why I do it. But if it wasn't also important to me, I think it would be very hard to keep up over time. And know that about guys. You're probably not going to be able to change him fundamentally. So don't think I'm marrying a guy who's pretty great, but there's these few things I really can't accept. But I think he'll change. He won't. In terms of imperfections, um, I think that's about all I really want to say. Um, uh, Figure out what are the really truly important things to you, and they'll be different for every woman. Don't have a list of 40 of them. There might be 4 or 5 deal breakers, and that's maybe all you get. Um, but but come up with the things you really know you need in a marriage, and then don't be willing to compromise on those, but look at the other things and look at what you can accept and what you believe will be okay for you. Now, final subject, playing games. This is the most complicated and one of my favorites. I'm going to tell you straightforwardly and as honestly as I can that men are likely not playing games. Women think that men play games because they play games. But I'm telling you, we really don't most of the time. There's the odd guy that's just a perpetual flirt and loves playing games and, leading women on and stuff. I know that happens. By and large, the men I know don't do that. And I didn't do that. More likely than not, if he likes you but he's not showing you, he's not playing hard to get. He's afraid of rejection. Okay? Think about that really carefully. We're in a society where generally, even now, the man is thought of as being responsible for making the first move, and then he's thought of as a creeper if he makes the first move and it wasn't something she wanted. Especially in the Me Too era. It's tough. So there's things you can do to make it easier on him in that regard, to show your interest. On that subject, I've heard so many women say, when will so-and-so get a clue? Well, I'm going to tell you, he'll get a clue when you give him one. And usually your clues are so subtle and deniable that he's not going to see it. And I'm going to tell you, men don't get hints. They just don't. We're thick, okay? We're simple compared to women. We generally don't get your little hints and the tiny little things you say to try to give us a chance or an opening. It's not that we're not interested, it's that we're not very clever when it comes to reading your subtle hints. Women typically are way more subtle than men. And I'm a pretty sensitive guy and more perceptive than most when it comes to this stuff. And I'm going to tell you, men don't get it. I didn't get it. Okay? I was more assertive and willing to take the risk than most guys are. And I counsel guys to tell women where you're coming from and what you want and let the chips fall where they may. Be bold and, not overbearing, but bold and let them know. But, all of the little hints I've heard of that women try to give men, that was a big opening for him. No, it really wasn't. He wouldn't have seen that. I wouldn't have seen that, And I've talked this over with lots of women over the years, and they'll say they gave a guy a big opening because they said this little thing or that little thing, and I think that would have gone right over my head if I had been in that guy's shoes. So I'm trying to tell you, he's not playing hard to get. He's not playing games. There's two explanations. Either he fears rejection or he's not interested. Okay, pretty simple. How do you know which is which? Take a risk. That doesn't mean giving him a subtle hint that's easy to back out of. That means being bold. If you give him a hint, make it a really strong hint, and then think about how you could make it even stronger and do that. And then he still might not get it. Okay? My sister didn't marry until her 30s, mid-30s. And she married a man actually that's 7 years younger, and I think they were in a singles ward together, if I remember right. But anyway, there was one day that she had mentioned to him at church or something that she had an issue with her car, and he's good with those things, and he offered to come over and have a look at it for her. And so he came over and he looked at her car and fixed it, and she thanked him and said, I got to be honest, I really have started to like you lately and think that it would be great if we could date and get to know each other. Well, a year later, they got married. And that was very bold of her. But she married him and she's got 5 kids with him now and she has a great life. Um, Not perfect, but a great life. But it took a little courage on her part to let this guy know how she felt. Now, it was ultimately up to him when she said, I'd really like you and I'd really like to get to know you. That isn't a subtle hint where if he rejected her, she could say, oh, really, I only wanted to be friends. No, she told him. She told him what she wanted. And oftentimes, I've heard women talk about, let's have a party and invite 12 people, including the guy that I want to pursue, and see if I can get into a conversation with him that night. That isn't going to work. And there's no risk in it. He doesn't know that he was the real reason you held that party. Okay, this is the kind of stuff women do all the time. And men don't get it. I promise you, they don't get it. For a relationship to happen, someone has to take a risk and someone has to say yes. It's the only way it happens. If there's a guy you're interested in, take a risk. He may not. And he's got good reasons not to in this day and age when, paying a woman unwanted attention can not only cost you your job, but land you in jail. But, and I'm not trying to be melodramatic about that, but men think about this stuff and it's always hard to get rejected. It would be hard for you. That's why in many cases you want to leave it to him. But I'm going to tell you, I don't believe men play games most of the time. There are, like I said, the odd flirt that will. Most of the time, if he's not paying attention to you, it's either because he's afraid and fears rejection, or he's genuinely not interested. Well, what happens if you let him know your interest and he says, yeah, you're great, but there's someone else I'm interested in, or whatever, however he rejects you. At least you know. Don't pay any more, don't put any more emotional energy into that. But don't sit around for, days and weeks wondering, because you might sit around forever and then not even see the other great opportunities that are out there for you that might actually go somewhere. So that's important. The best course then is to be as straightforward as you can. Okay? Now, I want to say something about physical affection. Right or wrong, like it or don't like it, he is often going to gauge your level of interest in him by whether you want physical affection or not. As men, many of us, me included, were taught to be gentlemen about this. And sometimes he holds back because of that. Not because he doesn't want you, but because he has been taught to be a gentleman. And in this day and age, like I said, the ones who didn't hold back lose their jobs and other things. They get a reputation for being too forward. So I want to tread as lightly on this subject as I can while still making the necessary point. And I'm telling you, and I'm saying this to be honest, that a lot of men will gauge your level of interest by, does she want to kiss me? Does she want me to put my arms around her? Now, women will get, a lot of women that are wise about this stuff know how to give certain signals. Rubbing his hand or his arm, or finding excuses to touch him in conversation. I learned how to pick up on those cues that, those things could mean that a woman is interested in me. A lot of men, aren't even that clever, but my point is that is one thing that really gets his attention. There are also issues. and many of you have experienced them, of feeling used. You know, somebody took you out and you had a long kissing session and then he never called you again. And you felt like it was, you know, you felt exploited or used or something. And why wouldn't you? You know, I mean, it's a perfectly natural way for you to respond or feel about that. So how do you handle this? How do you tread this water? Because it's a sensitive subject for all of us. Well, first of all, of course, you're going to keep your standards. And I don't want anything I say to suggest that you don't keep the law of chastity or anything like that. I also don't suggest that you use physical affection to manipulate a man. And vice versa. I would not suggest that of him either. I want you to keep in mind, though, that he will understand your interest in him in many ways and gauge that by how engaged you are in that area. And if he tries to take your hand and you pull it away or do something else with it, he's seeing that you're not really interested. If he tries to kiss you and you pull away, okay, he's going to think, okay, her interest in me is relatively casual or maybe disinterested, and you may not hear from him again. It's really important, if you are interested, not necessarily that you just do everything he wants you to and, you know, feel, even if you're not comfortable yet, but I think it's important to be very reassuring, because most single men are pretty insecure when it comes to this. And that is, you might say something like, I'm not quite ready for that with you, but I'd like to be. I like you. And can we give it a little longer? Wow, that would be, you know, if I was a man, and a woman said something like that in that way to me, I'd be totally motivated then. You know, not motivated because I get to kiss her someday, but motivated that, hey, she likes me. She's telling me that she likes me. And, you know, you may have different ideas about pacing and how much is too much too soon. That's all right. You can differ on a lot of things. But if you ever feel like you need to pull back or say, well, we need to stop right here, I'm not ready for this, be as reassuring as you can at the same time if you do like the guy. If you don't like the guy, you know, you maybe don't say yes to another date after that. Maybe you let him know, I'm sorry, but I don't feel that way about you. I wish you luck, though. You're a good guy, whatever. But if you do like him and you feel the need to put the brakes on physical affection, if you don't say something really reassuring like I just demonstrated, then he's going to take that as a personal rejection, that you don't like him, that you're not interested. So keep that in mind and be as reassuring as you can. He may seem really bold and confident. Inwardly, it's a big test of whether she likes him, if she's willing to kiss him. So, you know, for what that's worth, hang on to that and let's assume good intent. Not that he's trying to scam you, but that it is a genuine expression of interest, and he's hoping for the same back from you. And so that's let's navigate that sensitively on both sides. If there are men watching, I of course want them to be sensitive to how women feel about this. Women, I'm also going to suggest that physical affection can become a power struggle in a relationship. If that happens before or after marriage, I don't like your chances. There's got to be a way to communicate about this sensitively, where both people's feelings and needs are important. Okay, and there's so much shame in our culture about physical affection that oftentimes the person who wants less is seen as more noble or more moral or more righteous. And that is a trump card you can play, but the relationship is going to suffer for it. So try very hard to deal with this sensitively. And I counsel men exactly the same way. So I know this has been a relatively long video, and I'm pretty much done. I want to suggest, though, at this moment, I hope this has been helpful for women to get a little window inside the minds of men. And when you're dating, give you some things to think about that can make your experience more positive, and maybe give you some ideas to move forward and have a more successful dating life. And I may suggest that Kathy come on here and talk to men in the same way, to give the a more female perspective to them. So I appreciate you tuning in. I'm grateful for your trust in listening to what I have to say, and I hope you'll find it genuinely useful. And we'll talk again soon.